Welcome to the November 2018 Python and Oracle Database Office Hours. This is a sort of Ask Me Anything session with an icebreaker. So we'll do a little bit of slide work just to warm you up, give you some information about some interesting things which have happened, and then throw it over to you to ask questions either on chat, or you can unmute yourself if you have a microphone and ask whatever you feel comfortable to do. So these are the sort of ringleaders here on the call. I think you might be able to see them on the video. Anthony is the creator and maintainer of the, sorry, just getting that chat. Blaine's popped up a chat. We'll get to that in a minute. Anthony Twing is the creator and maintainer of the cxOracle driver for the Python Oracle database interface. Myself, Christopher Jones, product manager, general docs body in the database access group for scripting language drivers, and Blaine Carter, an evangelist who does a lot with some interesting projects at conferences and works with Python as well, and has got some good blog posts out there. And just to run on, this is the general kind of stuff that our database access group looks after, and in particular the people on this call look after some of these open source access APIs, the third-party drivers. We also liaise with some of those maintainers, particularly cxOracle is getting pretty popular at the moment. Office hours overview. As you might have seen, there's a little bit of a chat button somewhere if your menu bar is wide enough or not. Otherwise, there's a 3-dot more button, and you can either chat or talk with us as you wish. Throw out questions anytime you like. We'll get around to them. So stuff that we wanted to talk to you about. I had a couple of miscellaneous developer things. There's a link later which will get you to most of these blog posts. So these are the blog posts on my blog page that our group contributes to. First thing is that if you are on Oracle Linux and you are interested in Red Hat packages, we now have packages of cxOracle and Python in various ways that you can access directly. So system administrators might find that particularly appealing to make sure their machines are up to date all the time. Just at our last big Oracle Open World conference, just recently, at the end of last month, we released Instant Client Linux RPM. So some of you are familiar with the Instant Client, the packaging of those Oracle database libraries in the small footprint. And if you have Linux package manage versions of those, the RPMs, then you can get those without a click-through, so which you can now automate container creations and all sorts of interesting things like that without having to worry about having to log into oracle.com and do the click-through before you can do the download. XC18, so if you're interested in the Express edition of the Oracle database, the so-called theoretically lightweight version of the Oracle database, it's no longer perhaps so lightweight. It's got a lot more functionality in it now, which is in line with all of our enterprise editions. It's always been the same code base. That XE release has always been the same code base, but now it's got more features available in it. So version 18C, 18.4 to be exact, is available. So you might like that.
And if on that one, if you're intimidated by trying to get all that installed, if you go into Oracle's GitHub area and look for the Vagrant project, there's a Vagrant file, I guess is the correct terminology for getting that set up. So basically what Vagrant does is you install Vagrant, you install VirtualBox, and you download the thing from GitHub, change into the directory, and just type Vagrant up, and it will create a VirtualBox with Oracle Linux and 18C already configured and set up and ready to go with just that command. So check that out if you want to try 18C XE.
I hesitate to do that in some senses because the install is really just an RPM package manager install, a yum install, and then you run a configure script. So it's pretty easy already. But obviously the Vagrant automates all of this stuff and can be useful for you.
Right. You start with no VM at all, and it will create the VM and set all the ports and everything ready to go. So if you're comfortable with all that, have fun. If you're not, just type Vagrant up, and you get an XE database right there.
Yeah, and look out for the Docker images and things as well, upcoming. There's a GitHub Oracle site with a lot of Docker images as well. Sorry, Docker files really is what I saw on GitHub. So onto the main thing. This is, I think, is the last slide that I have here really for this stuff section. Actually, there's one more after this, but I'll go through this really quickly, and then Anthony was going to go through some examples. Are you not, Anthony? So the big thing that we had recently is that the cxOracle version 7.0 was released, and the two main features, amongst many, if you want to go and check the release notes, there's simple Oracle document access, and I'll leave it to Anthony to explain what that does. And we have some connection call timeouts, which are useful in a number of situations for people who want to try and limit runaway SQL statements. Let me just go quickly to this next slide for anybody who does need to drop off. We have a couple of recordings available. So these are video recordings. So Anthony was recorded at the big Open World conference that I spoke about recently. And then in the last week or so, the Jason team office hours, so the equivalent thing that you're watching now from the Jason team, was also recorded, and they cover SOTA as well in some interesting ways. But they have Python and Node Oracle DB examples. So Anthony, I'm going to just stop sharing for a minute. I'll come back. I've got some links, as I mentioned, which will be useful for you to access some of these blogs and what have you, and some other links to resources. But for the moment, let me throw over to Anthony so that he can do what he wants to do.
Okay, you can see my screen. I take it that's a yes.
Yep.
Okay. So this is simply the samples directory in a cxOracle GitHub checkout. And you can see there's a fair number of them in there. But right now I'm just going to show you SOTA Basic, which gives you some idea of how SOTA works. So connection is same as usual. Generally, using SOTA, they recommend the use of auto commit. That's primarily because most of the things you're going to do with SOTA are relatively simple, self-contained operations anyway. And if you use auto commit, then you don't have to worry about having to commit them later. The difference comes if you're going to do a lot of inserts, then you want to not use auto commit because you will dramatically lose performance. For now, there is batch insert being considered for a future release. So the first thing that has to happen here is we call get SOTA database on the connection. This doesn't really do much except give you the access to the SOTA API. This here shows you how to create a collection. You just give it the name, and it will go ahead and create a collection for you. A collection is simply a table with, if you use the default, 5 standard columns. One is the content, another is the key, a unique key, and then there is the version, which is used for optimistic locking, and then there is a created on and a last modified. And you can modify all these things by passing a second parameter here, which is the metadata, but usually the default metadata is sufficient. This here is giving you an example of how to create an index on your collection. This is simply to improve performance. And as you can see here, you give it a name, and then you can give it the fields that you want to index on. This is one of the types. You can also create a spatial index and a JSON index. You can take a look at the documentation for that. Then, inserting a document is as simple as creating a dictionary that looks like JSON. And you can then call insert one and get, or you can simply call insert one. If you call insert one, you will not get anything back. But if you call insert one and get, you'll get back some metadata. So you'll get back your key and your version and your created on and last modified, which in this case is being used just simply to display right here. But if we want to fetch the document back again, we call collection.find, and this find returns you a SOTA operation object. And you can then call things like key. And as you can see a little bit further down below, you can also call filter. And there's also a bunch of other functions that you can look at in the documentation that will tell you about, or that will give you the option to change the criteria that you're going to use to perform your operation. In this case, the operation we're going to perform is just calling get1, which returns to a document. And then we can call get content to get the content from the document. And we can also call get content as string, which is a JSON string, which might be useful in cases where you want to simply dump it out to the web. And we can also have another operation, which is replace. So in this case, we had Matilda who lived in Melbourne, and now we're going to have Matilda, she's moving to Sydney instead. So, and then this is example of inserting again, but this time we don't care about their keys, they just get in there. And then we're going to show you how to find all the documents that have names matching MA, and that's done like this. So this is the JSON index or filter specification. Again, this is just one example. There's like, and as you can see down below here, there's also regex, and there are plenty of other options which you can look at in the documentation. So in this case, the operation that we're performing is get documents, which returns a cursor, which can be iterated over, and we can display the results. This is another example, count. This does the count of the documents that match the criteria. In this case, because there's no criteria, it's everything. In this case, because we've got a filter, then we get the number of filters. Oh, sorry, in this case, we're removing. As you can see here, the operation that's being performed is remove, and it returns back the number of documents that were removed, and then we can drop the collection at the end. So this just gives you a kind of a basic introduction to how SOTA works, and I can show you what it looks like.
So I think it's worth saying that that implementation is pretty much identical to what we have in Node Oracle DB for Node.js users, and then the Java users. There's PL SQL implementation, there's a REST implementation. So this is a fairly major focus from Oracle to introduce this document API across all of the drivers so that you can insert in one, retrieve in the other, whatever you want to do.
Yep. Anyway, that's it for SOTA. The rest is just the documentation. So,
do you want to say something about the version requirements and things like that?
Oh yeah, the currently what's required is 18.3 for both the database and the client. And just be aware it's still in preview mode because there are a number of bugs that have been discovered. So they have already been addressed, and a new version will be out at some point to address them.
That's a new version of the Oracle client libraries, not
right.
the Python driver, because otherwise Anthony could push out the Python driver pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So I think there are like two major bugs. We found memory leaks, and if you're really serious about SOTA, we can get backports for those to you if you really want them.
Yep.
But it's certainly totally usable otherwise, just to try and access and play with. And since the Oracle Express edition is out there, 18.4, you can start hacking on that as well.
Yep.
What about the call timeouts? Do you want to give a little bit of an overview, or shall I stumble through that?
I don't have any examples of that right now.
Yeah, let me just quickly. So just talk amongst yourself for a minute.
Ask questions.
Ask questions, yeah. I had one slide, which I can probably find, that I gave at Open World Conference. Okay, let me try and pop this up. So this forgive the example that this is a Node Oracle DB, that we implemented the same feature in cxOracle as well. So this was the call timeout, and I think you'll understand that this is obviously supposed to be a Python execute here. But underneath, when you do your Python execute, a whole bunch of Oracle client interface or Oracle call interface statements get executed. This is just a subset. And the key thing is that these across the Oracle network to the database, these execute what we call 0 or more round trips. And the round trip is, as you can see, a message to the database and then back again. And we know in optimization land, you really want to reduce those round trips, but that's kind of beside the point for this. This is a timeout feature. And the basic thing is that for timeouts, if you set your call timeout connection, call timeout value to say 15 in this example, and this is what, I don't know, 12 or 10 milliseconds, not going to get a timeout triggered. This execute is just going to complete, even though perhaps the sum of these times, and there could be many more, is actually longer than 15 milliseconds. You're not going to get a timeout. The timeout is only on this round trip time. Technical reasons about implementation, efficiency, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the bottom line there is it's not really like a real-time solution for you, but it's a good backstop solution, which is going to catch you in most cases, particularly where perhaps the execute is the thing which takes most time. The execute, that first phase of the database, where the database is trying to gather most of the information. But if you're doing lots, quick execute followed by lots and lots of small fetches, perhaps, you may not see timeouts being triggered in those particular cases. But in this case, if you get a call timeout triggered, you set the timeout a bit lower, this second round trip is going to be interrupted. And what's going to happen is that the Oracle stack and database will do some kind of connection cleanup, because that connection is in an inconsistent state. That connection cleanup is allowed to run for another quota of time, which is the same as the timeout period itself. And if it's successful, then you'll get a error back from DPI layer, the ODPI layer under Python, if you're familiar with that technical level. Oops. And the connection will still be usable. You can go on and reuse that connection. But if that connection cleanup was not successful, you get an error 3114 back, and you need to kill that connection and open a new connection before you can do any work. So this is available in the database languages, and Python, cxOracle, and Node Oracle DB3 came out pretty much the same time with the same kind of functionality.
Yeah, with 18 again.
With 18, yeah. This actually needs an 18.3 client. Sorry, well, 18.1 client.
Yeah.
Okay, let me just pop back out of that presentation, and I'm going to put up the last slide I had, which was just those links. And really, we kept this short. We like to keep these short so you don't have to stay around very long. So we only give you a little bit of a taste of what's going on, but now it is the Ask Me Anything section in the last 10 minutes or so of this office hours. So as I mentioned before, there is the chats setting somewhere, either under the More button or you'll see it directly. If you look for the chat, you can ask us questions there and we can answer them. Or if you've got a microphone, you can unmute yourself and ask us questions. And otherwise, we'll just sit here and stare at the screen for 10 minutes. Something's flashing. Sending an array to Oracle DB in Python. And sorry, I'm just reading the chat here for benefit of the recording later. So yes, there is an example of sending an array. I think Anthony will dig one up quickly. And the second question is about presentation be available for download. And yes, the office hours presentations do get added to the page, or anything which is worth sharing is added to the office hours page as a link. And so that will happen some stage after in the next week or so. So keep your eye on that office hours page for the presentation recording from today. And of course, if you go to this blog post link, you'll find the mention of Anthony's session from Open World. So you get the full recording there with a lot more detail as well. Anthony, do you want to?
Yeah, my computer is misbehaving at the moment.
Okay.
I'm still looking.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if I have.
Well, let's do the execute many.
Execute many works, but that's not sending an array.
Oh,
Yeah,
is
is that
okay,
a
it's an array.
PSQL array we want, or?
Start with execute many and then do work your way up.
All righty. Batch errors has an example.
So where would users find this, Anthony?
In the samples directory, same place as I found the Soda Basic.
So what you really mean is on GitHub. There's
Yes.
the GitHub repository for cxOracle has a samples directory.
Yep. Or a source download if you got that as well.
Yep.
So here is our array of data. This batch errors example was simply showing how you would have to do it if you didn't have batch errors. So first of all, there's this execute many, and you can see the data to insert is simply passed directly like so.
So what am I seeing at the top of the screen? I'm seeing an array of tuples there.
Yeah,
so
array of tuples.
What are those tuples mapped to in the insert statement?
They map to the values :1, :2, and :3.
So what I expect, I guess, is to insert all of those array items as new rows in the table. Is that right?
Yep.
He says knowingly, yes. Okay.
Yes, that's exactly what will happen. And of course, in this case, because this is the batch errors example, I've deliberately introduced some errors. So you can see here, there's a duplicate key here, right? 1018 is done twice. And in this case, we have a parent that doesn't exist, this 60.
Mm-hmm.
So the only reason I show this is, it's got execute many in it. So the first time, if you do it, you get an error and the whole thing gets rolled back. And if you do it with batch errors implemented, then you will actually determine that what errors took place, but all the rest succeeded. So I can show you how it works. Sorry. So the number of rows in the child table is 15. I'm going to insert 8. That's the number of rows that I had in my array. The first time I get the first error, unique constraint, and the whole thing rolls back. And it tells you that, well, 3 rows did succeed, right? And now I can say my array DML row counts. You can see here 1, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1. So this is the number of rows that are affected by the statement. And then the number of errors which took place and the actual errors. And you can see that which row offsets they took place at as well. So that's execute many. Might be a simpler example too, but no. Oh yeah, there is, bind insert.
Okay, so the question has come back on the chat from Huang. I'd like to have an array example. So I don't know what you mean array, because there's an array and there's an array and there's PL/SQL arrays. So perhaps you can just define a little bit what you mean by an array. What's your data structure in the Oracle database that you're trying to work with? Are you calling PL/SQL? PL/SQL arrays. So passing to, do you mean passing to a PL/SQL procedure, I guess, in that case?
Yeah, so I have an example here. This is in the test suite, not in the samples. We probably should put one into, I thought there was one for some reason. PL/SQL collection. No, this is using that as well.
Just go with it.
I'll go back to the other one.
Yeah. So this is a test directory, also part of that GitHub repository.
Yeah. So if we have in PL/SQL a type called UDT string list, which is a table of varchar 100 indexed by binary integer, and then you've got test in arrays here, this function here, and this, I'll show you here what it does. Down here, all it simply does is returns the length of all of the elements of the array. So 1 second here. No, I should do the other one. String. So here you can see it's calling it. Return value is PKG test string arrays or test in arrays, passing in the integer value and the array. And you can see the integer value is passed simply as the integer, and the array is simply passed as a list in, right? That's up here. So you simply pass a list, a Python list, and that will translate into a PL SQL array. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you. So the place to get more information, of course, if you want to follow up, is actually back on that GitHub repository. Blaine's put the link up there. There's what they call issues. If you're not familiar with GitHub, there's an issue section there, and it really just means forum. So just go and ask questions and follow up if you do need to get more information from us.
Yep.
I'm going to just put that slide back up. We're kind of pretty much at the end of the half hour that we try and hit to keep things short and sweet. If anybody has any other questions, just yell out. I've lost my chat window for some reason on this screen, so Blaine, you have to yell out if somebody does ask a question. Otherwise, we can call it a day and reconvene next month or January, whenever other people have questions. We can always have another session. All quiet?
All quiet.
Well, let's wrap up the November 2018 office hours for cxOracle and Python. Thank you, Blaine. Thank you, Anthony. And thank you, everybody who's attended, and obviously anybody who's watching this on YouTube afterwards. Thank you very much.